I used to believe silence was harmless. That it was simply the absence of noise, a neutral kind of quiet. But as I grew older, and as I learned to listen not to words but to the spaces between them, I realized silence is never neutral. Silence is a wall, a weight, a shadow. Silence is the shape grief takes when it stays too long. Silence is what my grandfather left behind, even when he didn't mean to. And silence, if you let it, becomes the only language a family knows how to speak. I didn't recognize that when I was young. Back then, my grandfather Joseph Carter was simply the man who sat in the corner chair by the window, hands folded, humming songs that had no words. The kind of humming that feels like it comes from a place deeper than memory. He wasn't unkind, he wasn't stern, he wasn't loud, he was simply absent, even when he was in the room. Like he lived 2 inches behind the moment the rest of us were living. Like he existed in 2 timelines at once, the present, where he barely made a ripple, and some faraway past that held him tighter than we ever could. I used to watch him while pretending not to. His eyes would drift to the window, unfocused, as if he were searching for something. Someone. The worst part is that I never thought to ask him who. I thought that was just how old men were, tired, quiet, worn down by life. I didn't know that sometimes quiet is the scar left by a wound no one has tended. I didn't know he wasn't just silent. He was hiding a lifetime of sound he was never allowed to make. I learned this only after he died. And then again, in a deeper, darker way, the day my grandmother asked me to bring down a small wooden box from the attic. I remember climbing the attic ladder one slow step at a time. The wood creaked beneath me, not from age but from familiarity, like it knew my weight. The attic air was thick, heavy with dust and something sweeter underneath it, cedar, old fabric, memory. Sunlight spilled in through the little round window, making floating dust look like falling snow. And there, on the top shelf to the left, exactly where she said it would be, sat the box. It didn't look extraordinary, small, hand-carved, worn smooth in all the places a thumb might rest. A brass latch that clicked softly when I opened and closed it. It looked like the kind of thing a man keeps loose change in, or a deck of cards, or a few trinkets that don't matter to anyone but him. But when I touched it, something in the air shifted. Not colder, not darker, but stiller, like the attic itself took a breath and held it. I didn't open it. I don't think I would have dared. There was something about the weight of it that felt heavy with intention. Heavy with years, heavy with things meant to remain closed until every other option had run out. So I carried it downstairs, still unsure why my grandmother hadn't gone up to get it herself. She was sitting at the kitchen table when I came down, her silver hair catching the sunlight. Her hands folded, but not calmly. No, they trembled just slightly. Trembled the way you might tremble when you know a truth is coming back to knock at your door. When she looked at the box, she didn't breathe right away. "Put it down gently," she said. And so I did. Her fingers hovered above the lid like she was afraid the wood might burn her. Or that touching it would set something loose. "It's time," she whispered. "Time for what?" I asked. But she didn't answer. Not in words. She simply undid the brass latch with a softness that made it clear she had done this motion many times before, probably in the dark, probably alone. The lid creaked open. Inside were 4 objects. Letters tied with a blue ribbon, fraying at the edges. A pocket watch with initials engraved on the back. A folded photograph, corners softened by years of handling. And a small leather journal whose spine looked ready to crack from age and secrets. She reached into the box and took the letters first. Held them like a bird that might fly away if she loosened her grip even slightly. "These," she whispered, "are from Alma." The name settled in the room like ash after a fire. "Who is Alma?" I asked. My grandmother's eyes fluttered shut, and in that moment I understood that this name was not new to her. It was old. It was bruised. It was a ghost she'd learned to live with. She was your grandfather's first love. There are sentences that rearrange the bones inside you. That was one of them. Not because a man had been in love before he married my grandmother. No, people live whole lives before they choose the one they stay with. But because of the way she said it. Quiet, tender, as if the word love hadn't died, even all these years later. I looked down at the letters again. They felt fragile, like touching them too hard might erase the ink. My grandmother nodded toward them. Go on, she said. Read. The ribbon came undone too easily, like it had been waiting. The top letter was dated June 12, 1949. The handwriting was looping and soft. My dearest Joseph, I don't know if you will ever read this. Your mother came to see me today. She told me I am not part of the life she wants for you. That you have a future to build, and that I would only endanger it. She believes she is saving you. I believe she is wrong. But I cannot change her mind. My grandmother inhaled sharply through her nose, as if trying not to cry. I kept reading. The baby kicks stronger every day. My heart stopped. I looked up at my grandmother. She looked away. That was the moment I realized the story of my family was about to split open. What baby? I asked. My grandmother closed her eyes. Your grandfather had a daughter. The words were too big for the room. Too sharp. Too heavy. The air changed. A daughter. I whispered. She nodded. She was born. Healthy. Alive. Her voice cracked. And your grandfather never knew. I felt the world tilt. Felt something tighten in my chest. Felt anger, grief, disbelief. All of them swirling so violently I didn't know which belonged to me and which belonged to the man I had never truly known. I reached for the journal next. The leather was worn, the pages stiff. My grandmother nodded toward a marked entry. Read that page, she said. Joseph's handwriting was cramped, urgent. Mama told me Alma left town. Said she didn't want anything from me. But I know she's lying. Something in her eyes broke when she told me. If Alma were well, she would have written. If Alma were alive. The ink smudged as if a tear had fallen onto the page before it fully dried. My grandmother whispered, he spent his whole life believing Alma died in childbirth. That the baby died too. But that wasn't true, I said. No, she whispered, it wasn't. Why didn't anyone tell him? I demanded. She looked at me with a grief that had lived too long behind her ribs. Because Alma's family believed a child with a black father would suffer. They believed hiding her was protection. And Ruth? I asked. Grandpa's mother. My grandmother swallowed hard. She helped them. Something in me broke then. Something fundamental. My grandfather had been robbed. Of a daughter. Of a family. Of the chance to love openly and honestly. And he carried that loss in his silence. It lived inside him, shaped my father, shaped me. Then my grandmother handed me the pocket watch. Turn it over, she said. The engraving read, JM, if the world were kinder, we would be too. Who is JM? I asked. Jonathan Miles, she whispered. Your grandfather's father. I stared at her. Grandpa's father, I repeated. He never spoke of him. He couldn't, she said quietly. He never met him. Ruth made sure of that, too. It was too much. Too many buried things. Too much cruelty disguised as protection. Too much love sacrificed to fear. I unfolded the photograph next. My grandfather stood beside a woman I immediately knew had to be Alma. She was beautiful in a soft, luminous way. Her belly round with pregnancy. His hand resting against her back. Both of them smiling. A smile I had never seen on him in real life. I felt something inside me shift. This was the turning point, my grandmother said softly. The moment everything that might have been, stopped. And the daughter? I asked. What was her name? My grandmother's eyes shone with a mixture of hope and regret. Josephine, she said. The name hit me like a memory I had never lived. She grew up, my grandmother whispered. She had children of her own. I felt a chill. Grandpa had grandchildren, I murmured, and never knew. Yes, she said, and you have cousins. A whole branch of family we pretended did not exist. That was when everything inside me aligned with a single, undeniable truth. This story was not over. This silence was not acceptable. This door had been closed for too long. My grandmother looked at me with trembling hope. "You're the only one," she said, "who has ever been willing to open it." And in that moment, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would find them. I would find Josephine's children. I would find the part of my grandfather's heart the world stole from him. I didn't sleep the night I learned my grandfather had a daughter. I lay in my childhood bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the same silence he must have listened to for decades. The kind of silence that settles into the bones. The kind that grows roots. The kind that convinces a man to live small because the world has already taken the largest pieces of him. My grandmother slept down the hall, her breathing soft and steady, but even her presence couldn't soften the weight of the truth sitting on the dresser in the form of a small wooden box. I kept seeing that photograph in my mind, the way my grandfather stood beside Alma, not touching her belly directly but hovering, like he was afraid of breaking something sacred. I wondered how many nights he had stared at that same photograph in secret, wondering if the child he believed dead had ever laughed, or walked, or cried. I wondered if he had listened for the sound of someone calling him, Daddy, in dreams that turned to nightmares when morning came. Grief like that doesn't fade, it mutates. It becomes the rhythm you breathe to. In the morning, I found my grandmother already sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. The wooden box sat beside her, open, its contents arranged with a care that told me she had gone through them again after I went to bed. "Did you sleep?" I asked. She didn't answer with words. She just gave me a look that told me she hadn't slept properly in 50 years. "You're going to look for them," she said. Not a question, not permission. A statement of fact, and maybe something like a plea. "Yes," I said, "I have to." Her hands wrapped around the warm mug the way a child might wrap their arms around a stuffed toy, like she needed something solid to hold so she wouldn't fall apart. "There is something else," she said quietly. "Something you didn't see." She slid a thin envelope toward me. It looked like it had been opened and resealed many times. The paper was thin and had softened into near translucence. My name hadn't been written on it. Instead, the front simply said, "For the one who finds the box." My breath caught. "Who wrote this?" I whispered. "Your grandfather," she said. "Joseph wrote it the night before he died." I froze. My fingers hovered over the flap like touching it might burn. "Why didn't you give this to my father?" I asked. Her eyes dropped. "Because he wouldn't have opened it. And because I think Joseph meant it for you." My throat tightened. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, yellowed around the edges. The handwriting was shaky, but undeniably his. "If you're reading this, then I failed at keeping my past buried. Or maybe I succeeded in leaving behind enough breadcrumbs for someone to finally pick up the pieces. Either way, I want you to know that everything I hid to protect the people I loved. But love built on silence is not love at all. It is fear." I sat down slowly. "There was someone before your grandmother. Someone I loved so much it scared me. Alma. She gave me joy the world told me I wasn't allowed to claim. She gave me a child the world told me I wasn't allowed to raise. And I failed them both, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know how to fight what I couldn't see." My chest ached. "If my daughter is alive, if she ever had children of her own, tell them I wanted them. Tell them I dreamed of them. Tell them I loved them even before they were born. Tell them the world wasn't kind to me, but I pray it was kinder to them." The letter ended without a signature. Just an empty space where his name should have been, as if he couldn't bring himself to sign off on the truth. I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and held it to my chest. My grandmother watched me with eyes full of something heavy and raw. "You understand now," she said softly, "why he was the way he was." I shook my head. "I understand why he broke," I said. "I don't understand why we let the pieces stay on the floor." She flinched like the words had scraped across her skin. "We were afraid," she said. "Afraid of the world. Afraid of the consequences." Afraid of telling your father and your aunt something that would tear their hearts apart. So you let Grandpa carry all of it alone, I said before I could stop myself. My grandmother's shoulders crumpled. For a moment I thought she might cry. But instead she straightened and wiped under her eyes. Yes, she whispered, we let him carry it. And it killed him long before his heart stopped beating. I couldn't speak, not because I didn't have words, but because too many were clamoring to be spoken at once, creating a knot in my throat. She reached across the table and took my hand. Please, she whispered, don't let this story die with us. That was the moment I made the decision, not quietly, not tentatively, but with a certainty that echoed through my bones. I would find Josephine's family. I would finish what my grandfather started. But first, I needed to understand the man himself, not just the pain he carried, but the origins of it. And that meant I needed to go back further. To the beginning. To the reason he lived his life like he was always looking over his shoulder. To Jonathan Miles. I asked my grandmother if she knew anything about him, anything at all. She shook her head. No stories, she said. Just whispers. Ruth would never speak his name. She called him a mistake. I felt anger bloom inside me. A mistake, I repeated. He was her child's father. She didn't see it that way, my grandmother said. Back then, a relationship between a black woman and a white man wasn't just dangerous, it could get people killed. She wanted to protect Joseph. Or at least that's how she justified it. What about Jonathan? I asked. Did he want to be involved? My grandmother hesitated, then reached into the box again. She pulled out a folded note I hadn't seen before. A tiny slip of paper, tucked under the lining of the box. This, she said slowly, is the only thing of his that survived. I unfolded the note carefully. Ruth, please, let me see him. He deserves to know me. I am not trying to take him from you. I only want to be present. A letter, a photograph, anything. Please, don't punish him for what the world thinks of us. There was no signature, but the desperation in the writing was unmistakable. My grandfather's father had begged for a place in his son's life. And been denied. I sat back, the pieces of the puzzle rearranging themselves in my mind. Jonathan had wanted to be in Joseph's life. Ruth had prevented it. Alma had wanted to be with Joseph. Ruth had prevented that too. Grandma, I said softly, why did Ruth do all this? My grandmother looked down at her hands. Because, she whispered, she understood that loving someone the world forbid you to love often ends in blood. She thought she was protecting him from that. But she wasn't, I said. She was protecting herself. My grandmother didn't argue. She was afraid, she said. Fear makes people do terrible things. Fear. That was the thread that connected every tragedy in this story. Fear of losing a child. Fear of society's cruelty. Fear of punishment. Fear of love that crossed lines drawn by other people. Fear had shaped Joseph's life before he even took his first breath. Fear had followed him into love with Alma. Fear had stolen his daughter from him. Fear had smothered him until he became a shadow in his own house. And now fear had been handed to us like an heirloom. I wasn't going to keep it. Do you know where to start looking? My grandmother asked, her voice brittle with hope. Not yet, I said. But I will. And I meant it. That afternoon, I went to my father's house. He was in the garage, working on the old Ford he kept promising to sell but never did. He looked up when he heard me, wiping his hands on a rag. Hey, he said, did you check on your grandmother? Yes, I said. Dad, we need to talk. He frowned. What's wrong? Is she okay? I took a deep breath. Did you know Grandpa had a daughter? Everything in him stilled. His jaw tightened. His shoulders rose slightly, like bracing for impact. What are you talking about? He said slowly. I told him everything. The letters. The journal. The truth Ruth buried. The love he'd never healed from. The daughter he never got to hold. The family he never knew existed. My father didn't interrupt. He didn't breathe. He didn't move. When I was done, he sat down heavily on the stool beside the workbench. I knew, He whispered that something broke him. But I didn't know what. He rubbed his palms into his eyes. He was a good father, he said. But he never looked whole. Not even once. I nodded. He didn't know how to be whole. My father's voice dropped to a whisper. Why didn't Grandma tell us? She was scared, I said. All of them were. He let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped in his lungs for 40 years. What do we do now? He asked. I handed him the photograph of Joseph and Alma. We find the rest of our family, I said. He stared at the picture for a long time. When he looked up, tears sat in the corners of his eyes. Then let's find them, he said. We owe him that much.